Gunshots rang out in a Fort Lauderdale apartment complex the night before Thanksgiving. Neighbors heard them, but no one called the police. 6 days later, a teenage boy and his grandmother opened a bedroom door and found a body barricaded inside. This is the story of how Jason Bloomfield's life ended in silence and the disturbing truth about who was in the apartment the whole time. The apartment was quiet, too quiet for a home that had been expecting family over the holiday. A faint, sour scent clung to the air as Jason Bloomfield's son and mother stepped inside, calling his name. No answer. Their footsteps carried them past a cluttered living room and toward a door that shouldn't have been blocked. A couch had been shoved against it, as if to keep something inside. With effort, they pushed it aside, the heavy scrape against the floor sounding louder than anything else in that still space. The door cracked open. What they saw stopped them cold. Jason lay motionless, lifeless, a week gone. The room was small, the air heavy, the silence deafening. They backed away, calling 911, voices shaking as they tried to make sense of what they'd found. In that moment, grief collided with confusion. Who could have done this, and why? By the end of that day, suspicion had already taken a shocking turn, pointing toward someone far closer to Jason than anyone could have imagined. The woman he lived with. If this case shocks you already, drop your state or country in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe to Dark Trace Crime Stories for dark cases like this. I want to see how far this story travels. Jason Bloomfield was the kind of man people noticed for his steady presence. At 46 years old, he had built a reputation among friends and coworkers as someone reliable, loyal, and deeply rooted in the things he cared about. One of those passions was football, specifically the Miami Dolphins. Whether it was game day gatherings with friends or casual conversations at work, Jason's pride in his team was a constant thread in his life. He worked hard, showing up day after day, not only to provide for himself, but also for his family. Most importantly, Jason was a father, a role that defined him more than anything else. Those close to him recall that his relationship with his son was strong, filled with both the everyday moments and the big milestones that mattered. But like many lives that seemed steady on the surface, there were cracks beginning to show. Jason shared his home in Fort Lauderdale with his partner, 37-year-old Vianita Lenon. Originally from Detroit, Lenon had her own past and personality, one that seemed, at times, to clash with Jason's steadier nature. Their relationship had gone through ups and downs, and by late 2024, it was facing a storm of pressures. There were financial troubles, bills that kept piling up, the looming possibility of losing their apartment, and a sense of instability that hung over the household. Alongside the money worries, rumors of infidelity began to swirl. Friends and neighbors noticed tensions between the two, the kind that can turn everyday conversations into arguments and small disagreements into major conflicts. While the full depth of their private life was known only to them, those looking back now can see a mix of strain and mistrust taking root. This wasn't a situation that erupted out of nowhere. It was building over time. Each setback, whether financial, emotional, or relational, seemed to push them further toward a breaking point. In the weeks leading up to November 2024, their relationship had become a fragile balancing act. Jason continued going to work, holding on to his responsibilities, but the atmosphere at home was becoming more volatile. Lenon's frustration appeared to grow alongside the mounting bills, and the eviction threat added a level of urgency neither could ignore. These details matter because they paint a fuller picture of who Jason Bloomfield was and the environment he was living in before his death. He wasn't just a name in a headline. He was a man with passions, a family who loved him, and everyday challenges that tragically intersected with a dangerous relationship dynamic. It's this blend of loyalty, personal pride, and quiet struggles that makes what happened next so unsettling. The crime that would soon shatter Jason's life didn't come from a distant danger. It began in a place he called home, with someone he trusted enough to share it with. By mid-November 2024, the atmosphere inside Jason Bloomfield's Fort Lauderdale apartment had shifted from strained to explosive. The financial pressure that had been building for months was now impossible to ignore. Rent was past due, the landlord's patience was wearing thin, and eviction notices loomed over them like a ticking clock. Money was at the center of many of their disputes. Jason's steady paycheck wasn't enough to cover their growing expenses, and the gap between what they earned and what they owed seemed to widen every week. Lled, his live-in partner, wasn't just frustrated. She was vocal about it. Arguments over bills, over how the money was spent, and over who was responsible for their situation had become part of their daily reality. But finances weren't the only strain. Whispers of infidelity, whether rooted in truth or just suspicion, had begun circulating among people they knew. In a relationship already weighed down by debt and the threat of losing their home, these rumors hit with the force of a wrecking ball. Trust, once broken or even doubted, is hard to rebuild, and in this case, it seemed to crumble almost entirely. Neighbors later told investigators that the sound of raised voices from the apartment was not unusual in those final weeks. What was once occasional had become frequent. They described heated arguments that could stretch on for long periods, sometimes punctuated by sudden, heavy silence, the kind that leaves you wondering if the storm has truly passed or is simply gathering strength. The tension wasn't just emotional. It was physical in the way it filled the space. Jason, once seen smiling and chatting with neighbors, appeared more withdrawn. Lled, too, seemed on edge, her tone sharp even in casual interactions. As the days ticked toward November 23rd, the eviction deadline drew closer, and the sense of instability deepened. Their arguments grew louder and more pointed. Bills remained unpaid. The sense of partnership between them, if it had once existed, now seemed fractured into opposing sides. It was within this climate of financial desperation and eroded trust that the evening of November 23rd began. It was a Saturday, a day when many households are winding down, but for Jason and Lled, the quiet never came. That night, neighbors later recalled hearing something different, not just voices, but voices raised in sharper tones than usual. The tension was unmistakable. Then, at some point during the evening, the shouting stopped, replaced by a sound that would later replay in witnesses' minds: multiple gunshots. It was sudden, violent, and for those who heard it, alarming enough to cause immediate concern. But in that moment, no one could have known just how grave the situation inside that apartment had become. In the hours that followed, the building would appear outwardly calm, but inside, a deadly chain of events was already in motion. One that would end with Jason Bloomfield lying lifeless and his partner attempting to cover the evidence of what had just occurred. The days of mounting tension had reached their breaking point. The arguments over bills, the whispered accusations of betrayal, the looming eviction. They all collided in one final confrontation. By the time the last shot was fired, the damage could never be undone. Neighbors later testified that sometime after dark, the usual sounds of quiet conversation and television were pierced by the sharp report of gunfire. Multiple shots rang out from the unit Jason Bloomfield shared with Lled. Despite the intensity of the noise, no calls were made to police at the time. Those who heard the gunfire later explained their hesitation, some thinking it might have been fireworks or a domestic argument they didn't want to interfere with. Others assumed someone else would report it. But the truth was far more grim. Inside the apartment, the scene was chaotic. According to police findings, Jason had been shot in the living room. The details uncovered in the investigation point to a sudden, violent encounter. After the shooting, Lled is believed to have moved Jason's body from the living room to a smaller bedroom in the apartment. This room, described in police reports as cramped and poorly ventilated, became the place where Jason's life would end unseen for days. In an apparent effort to conceal what had happened, Lled is said to have barricaded the bedroom door by pushing a couch against it, creating a physical barrier that made the room inaccessible to anyone entering the apartment. The attempts to hide the crime scene did not end there. Investigators found evidence that Lled had tried to clean up the bloodstains inside the apartment. Clorox bleach, rags, and a mop were discovered, all with traces consistent with an effort to remove the signs of violence. However, the cleaning was incomplete, and significant blood evidence remained. These actions reveal a level of panic and desperation in the immediate aftermath. The attempt to hide the body and erase the blood was hurried and ineffective, but it indicates that Lenon was fully aware of the gravity of what had occurred. For 6 days, Jason's body remained in that bedroom, behind the barricaded door. Meanwhile, life outside the apartment complex went on as usual. Neighbors who heard the gunshots never made a connection to a possible crime. No one knocked on the door to check, and no one reported suspicious activity. In the days that followed, Jason did not report to work as expected, a fact noticed by his coworkers but not immediately acted upon. The silence that settled over the apartment was deafening, and yet the grim reality inside remained hidden. This night marked the beginning of a tragedy that would ripple through Jason's family and the community. What started as a domestic dispute escalated into a fatal shooting, an act that left behind questions about what signs were missed and what could have been done differently. The investigation would later reveal the chilling details of this night, not only the shooting itself, but the cold, calculated efforts to cover up the crime and continue life as if nothing had happened. The morning after the shooting, November 24th, should have been like any other day for Jason Bloomfield. His job at Burger King required a reliable presence, and coworkers expected to see him clock in for his shift. But Jason never showed up. His absence did not go unnoticed. Friends and colleagues began to ask questions, wondering why someone known for his dependability had suddenly disappeared. Yet, despite their concern, no immediate action was taken. The apartment building remained quiet, with no visitors or emergency responders to disturb the silence. Inside the unit, the situation was far from quiet. The body of Jason lay hidden in the bedroom, behind a barricaded door. For 6 long days, his death went undiscovered. During this time, Vianita Lenon remained in the apartment, acting in ways that investigators would later describe as suspicious and deceptive. Police reports reveal that she accessed Jason's phone, using it to log into his bank accounts and attempt a money transfer through Zelle, a digital payment service. The motivations behind this financial activity remain unclear, but it underscored the financial stress weighing on the couple and suggested a level of premeditation or opportunism in the immediate aftermath of the murder. In addition to the financial moves, Lenon engaged in a pattern of misdirection and false narratives. To family members and neighbors, she told stories that shifted blame away from herself, claiming at times that the gunshots were the result of a breakup argument or disputes over infidelity. These explanations were inconsistent and failed to satisfy those who knew the couple. When police arrived days later, they observed Lenon exhibiting what they described as fake crying, with no tears, a behavior that further fueled suspicion about her involvement. Such reactions are often noted in criminal investigations as attempts to manipulate perceptions, but the full truth remains known only to those closest to the case. Throughout the 6 days, no one else entered the apartment. Neighbors did not report unusual smells, noises, or signs of distress beyond the initial gunshots. The barricade on the bedroom door ensured that the scene remained undisturbed until Jason's son and mother finally broke through the barrier on November 29th. The delay between the shooting and discovery raised painful questions. How could someone miss the absence of a loved one for so long? Why did no one respond to the alarming gunfire heard by multiple neighbors? These unanswered questions left a lingering sense of tragedy and loss within the community. For Jason's family, the moment of discovery was devastating. The years of memories and moments they shared were suddenly eclipsed by the harsh reality of his violent death and the way it had been hidden in plain sight. This silence also reflected the difficulty many families face when tragedy strikes behind closed doors. The 6 days Jason lay unnoticed behind a barricaded door serve as a chilling reminder of how domestic violence can isolate victims, even from those who care most. On November 29, 2024, 6 days after the shooting, Jason Bloomfield's absence was impossible to ignore any longer. His son, growing increasingly worried about the silence and unanswered calls, arrived at the Fort Lauderdale apartment with his grandmother. Both carried a mix of hope and dread as they approached the locked door of the home Jason shared with Vianita Lenon. The small apartment building was quiet that day. From the outside, nothing appeared unusual. Yet the tension inside the son and grandmother was palpable as they prepared to confront the unknown. Their first task was to get past the barrier blocking the bedroom door. A couch had been shoved firmly against it, making entry difficult. With combined effort, they managed to move the heavy furniture aside. The door creaked open, revealing a scene that would haunt them forever. Jason's lifeless body lay sprawled inside the cramped bedroom. The stillness of the space a cruel contrast to the violence that had taken place there nearly a week earlier. The air was heavy, stale, and filled with the unmistakable scent of blood and decay. For the son and grandmother, the shock was immediate and overwhelming. The man who had been a steady presence in their lives was now gone, concealed behind a barricaded door, lost to them in a way that felt both surreal and unbearable. Their grief was compounded by confusion and disbelief. How had this remained hidden for so long? How could a loved one disappear without anyone stepping in sooner? In that moment, the harsh reality settled on them. Jason was dead. The silence and mystery that had shrouded his disappearance were shattered. Emergency services were called, and police arrived swiftly, sealing off the apartment to begin their investigation. The son and grandmother were left to process their loss amid the growing swirl of questions and media attention. The emotional toll of finding Jason's body in such circumstances would weigh heavily on the family. It was a trauma no one was prepared for, a violent death hidden in the place where he should have been safest. As news spread through the neighborhood and beyond, people began to grapple with the unsettling reality of what had happened just days before. The sounds of gunfire that so many heard but never reported now echoed back with a tragic significance. This leads to a difficult question for all of us. If you had heard those gunshots in your building, what would you have done? Would you have called the police immediately or hoped it was nothing serious? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective matters, and by discussing it, we can help raise awareness and prevent future tragedies. Once Jason Bloomfield's body was discovered, the focus quickly turned to piecing together what had happened inside that Fort Lauderdale apartment. Law enforcement moved swiftly to gather forensic evidence, searching for answers in the crime scene's physical traces. Investigators meticulously documented the bedroom where Jason's body was found, noting the bloodstains and the barricaded door. Despite attempts at cleaning, residual evidence provided crucial clues about the violence that had taken place. The presence of cleaning materials like bleach and mops indicated an effort to erase signs of the crime, but forensic teams were able to collect samples that would prove vital. One of the key breakthroughs came from digital evidence. Jason's phone became a central piece in the investigation. Police examined his call history, messages, and app activity, discovering that after the shooting, his phone had been accessed by lled. Using the device, lled attempted to transfer funds from Jason's bank account via Zelle, a digital payment platform. This unauthorized access suggested that she was trying to control his finances in the immediate aftermath of the murder. Further scrutiny of phone records and GPS data placed lled at the apartment during the critical time frame, confirming that she was the only adult present when the crime occurred and in the days that followed. The data contradicted any attempts to shift blame to other parties. In addition to the forensic and digital evidence, investigators uncovered disturbing posts on social media connected to lled. Among these was a message saying, "Satan gets busy when you pray to God." This cryptic post was included in the affidavit supporting her arrest, interpreted as reflecting a troubled mindset in the wake of the murder. Police also gathered witness statements, describing lled's inconsistent accounts of the events. To neighbors and family members, she gave different versions, blaming everything from alleged infidelities to breakup disputes. These conflicting stories raised serious questions about her credibility. As the evidence mounted, a clear picture began to emerge. lled was not only present at the time of the shooting, but took active steps afterward to conceal the crime and manipulate Jason's finances. The thorough forensic work, combined with digital footprints and witness testimony, built a strong case for prosecution. Police documented each piece of evidence carefully, knowing it would be crucial in court. The investigation's unraveling of the facts cast a grim shadow over what had seemed, on the surface, to be a private domestic issue. It exposed the dangerous consequences of personal conflict spiraling into violence, and the lengths some will go to hide the truth. In May 2025, more than 5 months after Jason Bloomfield's death, law enforcement moved to formally charge lled with his murder. The culmination of a thorough investigation, the arrest marked a turning point in the case and brought a measure of accountability after months of uncertainty and grief. lled was taken into custody by Fort Lauderdale police, who presented her with multiple charges. The primary charge was second-degree murder with a firearm, reflecting the violent nature of the crime and the use of a deadly weapon during the act. Additionally, she faced accusations related to fraudulent use of identification, stemming from her actions involving Jason's bank accounts and personal information following the shooting. The charges made clear the severity of the case and the weight of the evidence against her. Prosecutors believed that the combined forensic, digital, and testimonial evidence was strong enough to support a conviction. At her initial court appearance, lled entered a plea of not guilty to the murder charge. Despite the serious nature of the accusations, she denied responsibility, and her legal team prepared to contest the prosecution's case. The judge denied bond, citing the gravity of the charges and concerns about flight risk or potential interference with the ongoing investigation. This meant lled would remain in custody as the case proceeded. The legal process that followed was expected to be complex and challenging, reflecting the nuances of the evidence and the emotional weight carried by all involved. For Jason's family, the arrest brought a mix of relief and renewed pain, a reminder of the man they had lost and the difficult path ahead to see justice served. Jason Bloomfield's tragic death highlights the vital importance of early intervention. Welfare checks by friends, family, or authorities when someone goes missing or shows signs of distress can save lives before situations spiral out of control. Hearing gunshots in a neighborhood is a serious warning sign. Promptly calling law enforcement rather than assuming the noise is harmless can prevent delayed discoveries, like in Jason's case. Financial hardship and housing instability are often hidden pressures that increase the risk of domestic conflict turning violent. Access to social support services for families facing eviction or money problems can reduce stress that might otherwise fuel dangerous disputes. Recognizing escalating warning signs, such as frequent loud arguments, sudden withdrawal, or suspicious behavior, is crucial. Communities and individuals must remain vigilant and encourage open communication to prevent domestic violence before it becomes fatal. Jason Bloomfield was more than just a victim. He was a devoted father, a hardworking man, and a passionate Miami Dolphins fan whose life was cut tragically short in his own home. Behind the headlines and investigation details lies the story of a family forever changed by violence. A son who lost his father, a mother who lost her child, and loved ones left grappling with grief and unanswered questions. The pain of losing someone to a preventable tragedy is profound. It echoes beyond the walls of that Fort Lauderdale apartment, touching friends, co-workers, and a community that once saw Jason as a steady, reliable presence. His death serves as a stark reminder that behind every true crime story is a real person, with a life full of hopes, struggles, and relationships. As we reflect on Jason's story, it's important to remember the value of paying attention to the warning signs, the small cracks in relationships, and the stresses that can push ordinary people to desperate actions. It's a call to all of us to listen, to act, and to support those who may be silently suffering. If this case struck a chord with you, subscribe to Dark Trace Crime Stories and join us as we honor victims by telling their stories. Please like and share this video so more people hear their voices, and hit the bell so you never miss the next case that needs to be told.